Classic DM, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. Every single of our episodes, there's a lot of pre-work that does, pre-production work that happens before we do an actual show play session. And I had a few people ask me, such as the coworkers and folks who are really into D&D in the area, like how do you do your maps and how do you draw them? How long does it take you to do them? And how do you interpret the original module? And what changes do you make? And all that kind of stuff. So I thought what I'd do, I would just do it live. Today I'm going to do some prep work for a show that's going to be later tonight. So, and one thing I wanted to say right off the bat before I did anything else is, when I first started doing the show, I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to have some ambient sounds and maybe some music in the background. But, on YouTube, they're super, super critical on privacy and copyright violations, and no one wants to get in trouble with that kind of business because people try to make a living doing that. But I found this person's channel, and it's just going to work perfectly. I want to give them a huge shout out. Let me pull this up here and show you what I'm talking about. You can probably hear it in the background, these really creepy catacomb sounds. So let's just do this. Let's turn this title screen off, and let's pull up this little player panel here. So on the right, Sword Coast Soundscapes, which is probably not relation to Sword Coast Legends, the D&D game that came out for 5th edition, done by InSpace. That I think the producer from Dragon Age was involved in that one, Dan Tudge. But this person has a really cool, very well put together YouTube site. And the thing about that, to me, that's just so fantastic, they have about 14,000 subscribers, which is great, and they do all these thematic ambient soundscapes like you're hearing right now in the background. In fact, I could just change it to another one real quick. Let's just change it to one of the other ones so you can hear one of the other ones. They're really cool. So you think a damp cave. So this is just the middle of it. So in the background, you have these really cool sound effects. So if you're playing D&D or you got a digital video going or you're streaming and you want to have the sound effects that sound like the environment that you're actually in, I highly recommend this. Now, what they ask for is they say, if you will use my stuff, if you want to use these soundscapes in a live stream or podcast, just drop me channel a mention and perhaps a link to it. So I'm going to do that. Every single one of my shows, I'm going to try to use these soundscapes if they're applicable. And I definitely want you to go check out their channel. It's a Sword Coast Soundscapes. I think they started about 2017. I'll put a link in the channel if you go check it out and you use it in your game sessions as well. It's really, really neat. They even do custom stuff. I was very, very happy to see someone had done this. Even myself, I tried loading up Neverwinter Nights 2 and 1 and built a map and a level with a bunch of ambient sounds. I wanted to match some of the Glacial Rift to the Frost Giant Jarl. And, I couldn't find anything that was perfect. Now I want to have the game engine running in the background, and it was really kind of a huge pain in the butt. So let's find something super cool here that we can use, and we'll play that in the background. We'll get started drawing some cool maps. So that would be, you could use this dark, dank cave. That one's a little loud. There was one called Catacombs. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Let's just go back here for a second. I like the Catacombs one because it was a good background sound. Wasn't too much repetition of mouse squeaking. Here we go. I'm going to play this in the background while we do some drawings today. There you go. Just a howling wind in the background. Okay, so let's get our player panels up in here. So before you do anything, you got to put out the fire, right? So one of the things that's crazy about this show that some people don't realize, I used to be an architect. I was an architect for like 10 years, and you're always drawing freehand and drafting and doing all this kind of stuff. And I draw a lot of my stuff freehand myself before because I don't want to do it all digitally. Digital stuff kind of is cold and heartless. So for these other episodes, this is just an example of all the different maps that I've drawn. Like some of these are from these are from the Hill Giant King, the Steadying of the Hill Giant. This is from the Glacial Rift of Frost Giant. I always try to draw them so that the north is to the top, like this. And let's see here. And let's go down on our right-hand side here and let you see the player map. In fact, I'm just going to zip down there real quick. Here you go. So, this map here is from the Ramorhaz fight. You may remember that. I'm getting some skipping in the background of that YouTube video. I may have to be able to stream that. Then I have, you got any downloading going on? No? Okay. This is one of the dragon rooms where the dragon fighting was happening. I'm getting too much skipping on this music. I'm going to stop it for a second. Bandwidth issues, I guess. All right. Let's see if it gets worse. If it gets worse, I'll cut it off. This is one of the rooms we had last episode. This was done freehand. So we have tons and tons and tons of maps. In fact, at one point, I took all the maps and pieced them together. So look, here's some maps from the Steadying of the Hill Giant Chief and all kinds of neat stuff. So I'm just going to turn this off real quick because it's actually skipping like hell and sounds bad. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to kill this and use another flash player here in the background for this. There we go. Give me just a second. I'm going to change this. I want this music in the background. There you go. This should work. Anyway, so all these maps, you know, I'm doing these to scale. So the game uses a 1 inch equals 5 feet scale. And so to do these to scale requires a little bit of translation. So I sketch them in pencil first, and then I draw over it on this tracing paper. They call it bumwad in architecture. It's like a canary yellow tracing paper. And let's go to walk through. We're going to do that today. So all these crazy maps we've made in the past, let's just get those out of the way. And let's start off. The first thing you got to have your module. Whoops, sorry about the shake. You got to have your module. And one thing you also have to do to be able to set up is you need to have some pens, right? You got to have. This is all I use to draw, just this stuff right here. So let's see what we've got going on with this in the background. It's all lagged to holy hell and back. You wouldn't think I'm using that much bandwidth. I know I got their camera set pretty high resolution. There we go. If that starts popping again, I'm going to cut it off. So yeah, I can hear some skipping already. You know what? That's distracting and pissing me off so much. I almost just to turn it off. So one of the first things I can do, I'm going to turn this down a little bit in the background, and that way I don't have to have that popping too bad. So I use a roll of tracing paper like this, and then what I'll do is I'll plan out in advance what area am I going to actually work on that day. So I know in advance where the players have been and what they're going to probably do, but I don't can the play session. So on the right hand side, here's the original map, and so we've got a few parts of this map that we're probably going to do. In fact, I'll pull this up on here, and in fact, here's the lower level we're at right now, right? So last episode, you may remember, everyone was fighting in this area here. We'll just make this all yellow, right? Everyone was fighting in this big room here, and this is where this area here is where the two white dragons were, which was a really nasty episode 6, I think it was. Really great. And this is the lower level of the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. So what I know was going to happen, we actually had people in the Patreon channel vote, does everyone go north? Because there were some ads that came through this passageway up here to the north. And this map is very funny because unlike some of the other maps in the first edition, this map actually lines up like this. So this is the upper level, but if you see right here, this is the area that goes down. But this map, so in reality, they're kind of like, they're juxtaposed like this, right? So it's not like this map is on top of that map. So it's not like this is a stair that goes and turns and goes down like a stairwell does in a garage or something. So this map is down underneath this. It's to the south of the whole map, of the whole adventure. So no one wanted to go down this way, so I know in advance for the episode I don't need to draw this. So I've got an area that can happen. All this area here can probably happen next, but we're using this 5-inch grid here, and let's get some tokens out. We've got some minis we've been painting, but they're not done drying yet. They're being coated right now, so we're gonna put this over here. So we got all these different minis. So let's just put a few Frost Giants down to give you a sense of scale. Here's some Frost Giants. And we got our little box of player tokens in here. There's a few minis that are being used here. Let's put Zolorus down. Let's put a few other kids down. There you go. Get rid of these minis. And so this will give you a sense of the scale of some of these characters, right? Let's get these out of the way. All right. So the reason why I brought that up is so all the scale is related, because when you're going to draw something, you want to draw it to scale. So this is a 1-inch grid. So 1 inch equals 5 feet in this first edition of D&D. So if you've got a character standing here and a character here towards you, on the Frost Giants, I'm making them 1.5 inch diameter. These are all done on fender washers with felt backings. So that's about how big everything is to scale. So we want to draw a room, but when you look at the old D&D maps, one thing very interesting is these things are always 10 foot. So every one of these little squares on graph paper, this tiny little 8.5 by 11 graph paper is 10 feet. So one of the first things you need to do is like, okay, what's the biggest width and what area would the gameplay probably happen in this area? And how far will I really need the map to go? Because what you want to, I've got this camera and it can really only show this much of the space. I can't show the whole level the whole time. I don't have fog of war that I'm racing digitally, and I want the detail to be large enough for you to actually see the characters running around and doing stuff. So one of the first things I try to do in my mind, I say, okay, well, what area of the map do I need to create? That's why a lot of times they're made by room. So this area 5, now things that actually have happened in the map have changed. Area 5, this is a good place to start. We'll drew this area 5 first, and see it comes into this open area here and branches down, and then branches here. You got lots of pillars happening here. This is really a secondary space. What we need to do is use a red pen for this. So we'll do it like this. Here we go. So we'll probably do this as an area number 1. This area here could be number 2. And then we got these separate individual spaces here. That'll be 3, 4, and 5. So we could build 5 individual maps, have one common room map, and then another map for this, another map for this. And then when you get down to here, it's going to be a huge nightmare. But we'll have to figure that out later. So let's just start off with map number 5. So the first thing I want to do is I don't draw on the glass. It'll break the glass if you do that. What I do instead is I draw just on this dry erase marker board that I marked up with the 5-inch 1-inch grid. Let me get this stupid fan out of the way before it falls down and hits something on the head. All right, cool. So we want to use the whole space, right? So we get this yellow tracing paper. You can get this tracing paper at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or whatever. It's there's a company called Beifang, or however you pronounce it. It's a German company. It looks like this. It's Bienfang or something like that. Beifang. It sounds like some kind of evil winter wolf. That company has been making architectural paper forever. So what we like to do is get some of this tracing paper. It's called canary yellow. Some people call it bumwad. You get 12 inches or 18 inches. The reason why I like to do this is because it has a nice color and tone to it, and you can see through it. So usually what I do first thing, right off the bat, is we'll get a piece of this torn off as straight as we can. And I don't use a knife or anything. I'll just take this, put this ruler on here like this, and we'll just tear it. There we go. So one piece of cool trace paper ready to go. Get this big ugly ruler out of the way, which costs like $1. So, and we can just put this down. And then I'll just get some tape. Usually some drafting tape will work, or any kind of crappy masking tape. And you kind of just want to tape the top. Now I'm going to be drawing from the side. What you're seeing is I'm sitting to your left, okay? So I'm sitting over here, you're looking this way at the table. So imagine you're sitting at the kitchen table with me, and I'm going to draw the stuff for you. So I'm just going to tape the top up here. And this is just temporary, this isn't permanent. So I can actually see the grid underneath here. You can see I've ruined some of the stuff beneath here, but I'll fix that. That stuff's easy to fix. So then we got our map here. We're like, okay. For the players, I always make everything facing north. So we need to turn this way. So the direction I'm facing is the direction this is going to be. So you're going to see this map drawn from this direction here. So what's the biggest width here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times 10 is about 70 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. So we got 70 by 50 at worst, right? So let's just do the 7 first. So I'll just tick these off. There's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. We can shift that over 10, add another 10. And what do we say, about 50? So this is pretty much the middle here. Let's just make this the middle point. And we go 1, there's 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 30. And that gives me a sense of what the maximum extent of the map is going to possibly be for the area I'm going to draw in. So from there, we can just say, okay, well, what do we have happening here? We'll start over here at this end. So pretty much centered on the map. We'll put this down here so you can see it a little bit. Center of the map is a large boulder. That's usually about 10-foot wide opening. So I'll just sketch a little loose line here, just put a little opening. And one thing I'll do later on is after I ink everything up, I'll erase all the pencil stuff. So I just use a little eraser like this, a little drafting eraser at the end. You have to make sure to get all the ink off of it, otherwise it'll screw up everything. So I'll actually draw an ink, and once the ink dries, I'll just erase all these light sketches I do. So we've got a boulder opening happening here, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's where our 70 feet mark is. So we've had this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the worst case scenario is we're going to probably go to about here. And we're mostly dipping down low here. So in the center point, this is going to dip down to this is a 50 foot here. So we're probably going to dip down like this. And it kind of tapers up how from the center. We go just 1, 2, 25 feet this way, 25 feet that way. So here's 10, 25. So the worst case scenario is this thing pretty much is like this elliptical room like that, right? And that's really boring. That's not very interesting. In fact, I'm going to tilt this up a little bit so you can see a little bit better. There we go. And I'll just cock this at an angle. So this is the room coming in from the east going towards the west. So you have this boulder entrance happening about like this. Now we got this room that kind of tapers down to the furthest extent here, but it kind of tapers down at an angle, and then it kind of comes back up like this, and then it has this little part that sticks up and it sticks down, and this over here is kind of like just a bunch of jagged whoop-de-doo going on over here, and this kind of tapers into this little opening here. So it gives us kind of a rough little shape of what the cave is. For cave stuff, it's not as big of a deal. For architectural stuff, it's easy because but we've got this horseshoe shape Because if you see right here, this horseshoe shape is going to turn the corner and go to the next map. I want to stop the next map about right there. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to tease part of this, but I'm going to stop it. So this will be the stopping point for this map. And this is just going to come around like that. So all we really need to do is just start laying this out. So I use these wide tip chisel point Sharpies. They work really, really well. Another thing I try to do is I try to make sure I'm consistent with the type of line weight and the way I do the drawing. So even though it's just goofy sketches, I try to have kind of a consistent language of what I'm trying to do. Let me give you an example of that real quick. Let's pull out one of the maps from one of the previous episodes. Let's see here. This one's not bad. Let's use this one. This is from the Remorhaz fight up on the upper level of the Glacial Rift. So you see there's usually 2 or 3 different line weights here. So you have a thick border line that's articulating solid geometry, and then on the back face is another line to give it double thickness. I use thin lines to represent topography or sloping surfaces or drawing little bones in, and I'll use a Sharpie for edges like this and put little tick marks to represent dirt and fill this kind of stuff in. So I use a consistent line weight. So the darker and the thicker it looks for you, stuff I back face lit means solids. This is a big snow dome. So I try to use the same type of line weight. That's kind of important. If you start switching around, here's an example of just a crappy little barracks, right? Here's a crappy little barracks from the steading of the Hill Giant Chief. So in this situation, we're using super thick black for double thick walls, and we just got hand-drawn beds in here, nothing fancy, because we knew that we were going to draw the torch fire and all that stuff, and I'll put door swings in there for the rest of the area. So let's go ahead, and this is the fun part. The first edition modules don't have a lot of detail, but the one thing we're definitely going to do is this place has a Boulder Door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Sharpie right here. I got 3 Sharpies I'm going to use. Don't need the highlighter anymore. You use a middle Sharpie, which is the good old-fashioned basic Sharpie that everyone in the whole world has seen before. And we're just going to go ahead and put this boulder here. It's about 10 foot wide. Just going to draw a large, rocky, goofy boulder. And we're going to start drawing in some of the walls. And we're going to make these kind of like cave-like. So the thing I try to do is try to make these kind of jittery and crooked. So I don't want them to be super straight, because it's supposed to represent like the inside surfaces of a cave, right? So this is kind of comes down, and it dips around to another opening, and this is going to come over here, and this is where the map ends. So the same thing for this one, just going to come around, and caves are easy because you don't have to be good, right? You don't need to draw any straight lines. We're not drafting here. We're doing this freehand sketches, and that goes off like that. And I usually try to go back and look at the map. Were there any subtlety details in here that can affect combat? No. Most is just in and out and in and out. If you look here in a little more detail, in fact, if you look on the right-hand side, we're looking at this area 5. I'll put the mouse cursor over here. So you see this area 5. So we're just doing this really, really basic room here. So I'm just going to put this here. Now the real fun comes in articulating what's in the room. A lot of people build models and stuff like that. It's really kind of fun. But we don't like to do that. What we like to do is draw all the furniture and the other details in the room for you. So let's just go look in the module and see what's in room area 5 at the lower level. And then from there, we'll get some ideas. This is from the very bottom. And let's see, number 5. Here we go. All right. What does it say? So it says, this is the actual entrance to the Jarl's complex. It's always guarded by 2 large frost giants. They were in the actual last fight. They came forward. One will fight while the other sounds a great iron horn hung on the iron chains above. So that's a nice feature. Requires 1 full round to reach whatever. And then is there anything else in here? No. So really what you have, this is a guard room, and it has the only detail you have from Gary Gygax back in the old days here is this one little detail. He doesn't say anything about the decorations or anything. So this is a chance for you to be super creative. You have a great iron horn hung from iron chains from above. So let's figure out where that would be, right? Before we do anything else, before we figure out any kind of armory or place they sleep or where the torches are. So if you have a big door, this big boulder, and they roll it out of the way, that means the iron horn probably is maybe somewhere around here. And it would be in a way where someone can run over and blow the horn, and the horn would probably want to blow the sound down this way so everyone back in the complex can hear it. You wouldn't want to have the horn pointed this way to the tip. So by doing it this way, someone can actually, let me tilt this up a little bit. You can blow the horn, the sound echoes down the hallway. So to make it interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of do a little rough triangle like this and just say that's basically the shape of the horn. I'll have it hanging from chains, so it's just two little marks here. Have it hanging from chains. Maybe we'll have some kind of huge stand next to it that's made out of wood framing that'll hold up the side of the horn. Maybe they can blow on one side here. It's kind of like some silly alpine horn. Maybe it's a huge, massive dragon horn or something like that. So I'll articulate that in detail when I do the. So with that being said, that means someone can run around. So you got a frost giant here. Where's a frost giant? So you have a Frost Giant guard number 1, Frost Giant guard number 2. This guy runs over here and blows the horn. The sound comes whipping down the hallway, wakes everyone else. More guards come hauling into the room. That's what you want to have happen. So they would probably have maybe a light source maybe about here, and maybe something over here, maybe over here and over here. That way you can kind of see, because the light sources are going to be about 20 feet. These are all torch lights. And this cool horn in the middle. Now, another architectural feature in here would be really nice. So there's no mention of that. There's nothing in the actual module. It's completely up to you. So this is where you kind of wanted to design the space if you're doing a game design. I used to be a level designer, so what else could you put in this room to make it interesting? Well, you know, if you're going to guard duty, what are you going to do all day long? So they're probably going to have maybe like a huge table where they could sit here like this and play cards and goof around and drink. And if they're going to sit here at a big table, have big bench seats, someone can face this way like a big picnic table. It's a 10-foot deep big table. Maybe next to this they've got a rack along the wall to keep all their spears and weapons and huge battle axes on. So if that's going to happen, they probably don't need a torch there. But maybe they'll use maybe it's cold in here, so maybe they want to have a brazier. Let's just see, where would a good place for a brazier be? If it's right too close to here, it's not good. Let's put a brazier back here. This would be like a ground-mounted fire pit kind of a thing. We drew one of those last time. We do the same kind of design for this time that we did the last time we drew one. In fact, let me just pull that up real quick. Let me move this out the way. All right. I need more space for this stuff. Let's see if we can find that for you real quick. So you don't have to go back and dig up another video. We've done braziers a few times in the past. They do it kind of consistently. So many maps. Here we go. At the bottom. They're always at the bottom. They're never at the top. So this here. So this is kind of this. When I was first laying out this other room, I was like, we need a big old brazier here. This is something like 5 feet in diameter, have huge pieces of wood burning in it. So we can use the same kind of design here. This thing's like a north, south, east, west, compass rose type design, multiple supports. You have logs sitting in it, things like that. So let's just do the same kind of design for this one. So we'll put a brazier about here. Along here would be a good place for them to have cloaks hanging on the wall, things you need to get. You jump up out of the chair if someone comes rushing in the door, grab a big weapon, grab a shield or something off the wall. If you need to bail, you can run out this way. Now, what's going to happen on this wall? Well, along here, maybe there's let's put another little table here. We'll put another table that just has junk that you can eat. So they have food sitting out. Maybe there's some cabinets hanging above or a shelf. Now, what's going to be over here? Let's just put some more cloaks hanging on the wall and bags, and maybe in a pile of boulders. So we'll do a little pile of boulders here, because these guys like to throw boulders. So maybe they're going to grab some boulders and go in the hallway and throw boulders. All right, so we got the basic concepts out, the space laid out. Let's just start drawing right away. So one of the first things I like to do is just get the piece of furniture down first. So we just put this big table like this, and it's got a bench table underneath it. We just do real straight, fast, confident lines, nothing shy. Here's the little cabinet we have against the wall, like a little table. We'll use dashed lines to represent maybe a shelf that's above. Maybe it's just got meat on it or whatever. We've got boulders here, so we don't want those to be totally perfect. With some boulders stacked up. And we're drawing this as if stuff is, you're looking down from above. It's like a floor plan view. So maybe some boulders are underneath and picking underneath like this. And we'll articulate that in more detail later. And we've got the big horn. Let's make this a cool, if you had a horn that was curved, you have a horn like this, right? Here's what it looks like from the side. You probably would be able to see an elliptical shape at this end, and maybe it tapers in like this. So we're just going to do a strong ellipse like this, and we're going to have this thing taper in kind of a funny tapering shape. And we're going to come to a little point here. It almost looks like a wine bottle or something, and put a little funny nib on it. And then we just put these little wooden frames on either side, even though it's hanging from chains. Let's just be sure to put the chains hanging from the ceiling like this. Just put a little articulation there so you can tell what that is. And we have the brazier. Brazier, that's kind of close to that table. So, you know what? Where would be a better place for a brazier? Would it be better over here? I like it over here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this. Let's just get this out of the way. There we go. Get that out of the way, and we're going to put that brazier back over here a little bit more. So it's kind of butted up against the wall. So get a little circle going. And let's put north, south, east, west major supports for this thing. Imagine this thing kind of like a 50-gallon drum. Two little baby supports we need to keep from teeter-tottering. Like that. That's a good basic shape of that. And put another line here. Like this. Not really drawing shadows in on this stuff yet. So that, and then we were talking about torches. So I always like to do just a basic circle wall sconce type thing. We had a little rack over here that may have two-handed axes on it, which would kind of look like this. Just put a little detail on it. We got some cloaks hanging down from hooks. Just some simple shapes, nothing too crazy. Just enough to remind you when you run the game session of what's over here, what would you see? Because you want the players to be in the room and think, okay, I come bursting into the room, we're going to start kicking some butt. We got a frost giant sitting at the table, you know, so you can describe the scene to them and where the light is. This is something I think is really important to make the maps come alive with. Where is the light sources? Light sources and smoke and all that kind of stuff helps you imagine. If it was a video game, you would just see it. In fact, you run another torch along here. And we put one on this little apex here. There's a little niche here, but I'm not going to worry about it. So that's our basic layout. Now, with our fine line weight, we can do other details. We can do things like, hey, let's make this a big, heavy timber, rough-hewn table. A bunch of boards kind of nailed together, like a picnic table you see at a state park, right? You can actually just do this like this. And let's make this just a two-piece with single line on it. And let's make this horn cool. So the one thing I want to do, and you heard me mention this before, you want to kind of get rid of the pencil guidelines when you're doing this. The ink is dried relatively okay. You do it too early, you'll smear ink everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's beautiful because it's not like you're printing this stuff. Just enough to get this out of the way, and then maybe start putting some detail in here. So I'm just going to put some striation lines on here. So when you do striation lines or tonal lines, stuff like that, as stuff represents something curved, you want the lines to get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer together as they go down. And we'll put a little shadow on that later on and put some little details like this. And we got this happening like that. This going through. There we go. I'm just going to put some tick marks on this little wooden support thing just to make it stand out a little bit better. And I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and bolden this up with some definition. There you go. Make it a little thicker, feel more like a lip, maybe a little shadow, like that. And we're just going to do what I call a single line drop shadow. So, you know, when you have a shadow on something, if you've got a square, say you have a square, right? Here's a square, and the light source is over here. That means that this face and this face get the drop shadow. It's a very simple type of concept. Now, I'm not trying to do this as classical art, right? This is just fast, dirty. I took like 4 seconds to draw. So just enough to give it a sense of depth, right? If you're doing this on Photoshop or something, there's all kinds of beautiful filters you can do to make it brilliant. We're just trying to do this thing really, really rough, really, really quickly. All right, so let's get this out of the way. Let's get all this extra pencil junk out of the way. And then we're going to clean up this. We're going to go to the back side of our trace paper and do some more detailing. We don't need this anymore. One thing you can do, since this is just kind of taped down, you can tear the paper if you're not careful. Let's make sure we get that turned this way. You can tear the paper if you're not careful. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to start trying to erase with the paper loose like this. What you want to do is kind of make sure there's no air underneath the paper wherever you're drawing, whether it's a kitchen table or whatever, and just kind of hold this taut. So as you're holding this taut and doing the erasing, you're not dragging and ripping the tracing paper. Because trust me, the tracing paper, it just tears. It's just like, whoop, there it goes. So it just really tears really, really quickly. So once you've torn it, you can't put it back together again. And we had some initial guidelines we did for the first part of the cave. Let's get those out of here. Because when you want to put this on the map to play, you don't really want all the pencil stuff that you on there that you were using to figure out where everything is. You want it to look like you drew it magically perfect the first time, right? All right, we got a bunch of little guidelines over here. In the old days, you should do this with non-reproducing blue pencil. Back before there was computer media, everyone laid out magazines by actually pasting pictures on grid paper, if you can believe that, with like double stick glue sticks and stuff like that. So there used to be one of the colored pencils you could get from Prismacolor was called non-repro blue. They may still use it. I'm not in the publishing industry like that, but non-repro blue would not print in a Xerox machine or Xerox printing. So you print things with guidelines all over the place in this very faint aqua color. All right, we got most of the stuff up here, right, don't we? All right. So if you got a brush, get the extra gibble bits off of there. One thing I always like to do to remind myself, so I start moving the map around, is remember we want north to be top for the player, which is just basically an X, and fill this in here, and this is an N for you. So the north is always to the top for the player. All right, so let's go to the back face real quick and do some line work on there, and then we'll come back to the front face and do some more. So then I usually flip it over, and this is where I'm just going to do quick little cave detail. So I come in set from one width of this chisel point. This is a chisel point, which are beautiful, right? So just go, and I usually draw away from me or close to me, and I'm just going to go inset by 1. And this is just a cheap, crappy way of not putting black on top of black. It's just to give you a sense that this is the outer wall, because we're using a lot of thick lines. And the reason why we're using so many thick lines, you want to read on the camera. Even though we're just using this little 1080p Logitech camera, if it isn't bold enough, it won't read. You don't want thin little fiddly lines. So this is going to give us the back. When you see this on the camera, you can just spin the paper on however you want. It'll read as thick cave walls as opposed to just thin lines. One thing they used to do in a lot of the original D&D maps is a lot of the maps have this kind of a blueprint look to them. This is on blue. I printed this myself as a printer, but you know, they have this, everything had kind of a blue look. In fact, it's over here on the right, right? Here's right. It has this like blue ditto look to it, like it's done in crappy single tone. Back in those days, getting something printed was a lot more expensive than it is now. So that is, in some ways, some of the magic of the classic stuff. The classic stuff was done in a technology level that was really no better than the Renaissance. The only thing that was really different was the fact that you could go to printing and do offset printing. Today we have print on demand and digital printers and laser printers. They didn't have any of that back then. So when they're making these original modules, you know, when you start seeing the sketches in Tomb of Horrors and Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan, those kinds of things with hand-drawn art, you know, there's a lot of non-repro blue in there. Even though comics and stuff, if you're big into comics, those things are all drawn by hand or traditional media methods. So that's pretty much that on that side. You could do something like this. You could say, listen, you got a boulder here. Why don't we just do something with this boulder? Let's just put some lines on this, on the back face. We're doing this on the back face, okay? And is there anything else in here you want to do? No, it's okay. It's okay like it is. So we're going to flip it back over. We got that back face done. And also, you know, if you're using the Sharpie, make sure it's dried. And it's usually about 7 to 8 seconds. So if you put something down on Sharpie and you immediately touch it, you're going to get this, okay? You put down on a Sharpie and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You still get a little bit, but not as much. So if you give it another 10 seconds, you can now see this original one's already completely dried. So this is like 4 seconds, 10 seconds, and 6 seconds of smearing. And we'll cut that off later so you don't have to worry about it. So if you're a pretty good pen to work with, a lot of modern gel pens are so wet that if you run your hand over it while you're working, it'll just smear everywhere. Okay, we still got some crappy pencil work everywhere. We want to get rid of some of that. There's some pencil work here. These are the tick marks I was using to count out stuff. And we're off the grid a touch. Let me get back on the grid. There we go. I use a table to line the grid up here. All right, so this is where I like to do a little bit more detail here before we put tick marks and stuff. So we've got this little frame here. We can detail out the heavy major elements of this frame. We're going to need to draw some logs. And if you think about logs, they're going to have elliptical noses that come to the tip and then wood that goes down. So you got some big logs hanging down a little fire pit like this. And that looks pretty decent. A bunch of wood stacked up. You can do a little wood grain in there if you want to, make it look a little cooler. The other thing is you're not trying to draw the final sketch when you're doing this. You're drawing enough so that when you put the glass on top of it and use a dry erase marker, you can then embellish with where the smoke's going and all that kind of stuff. You can do the same thing with this. You could make these have little details on them if you want to. It doesn't really add much to it. This big crazy looking thing here is goofy. We have this table here. You could put a little faint little wood grain. There's a wood grain technique I learned from Michael Doyle, who's the author of Color Drawing. I'll show it to you here on a trace pad. So you're going to do wood grain. Let's say you've got, here's a table like this. This ink doesn't take well on this paper. You could just draw a straight line. But what you want to do is you kind of want to go up an angle and down. And then the next one kind of go up an angle, then down. And up an angle, then bend over. And then up an angle and bend away. And then up an angle and bend down, up an angle and bend down. Then you can make these other little parts that come in like this, and there's your basic wood grain pattern. So if you want to draw wood grain on something, but do it with a really fine line weight. So this is another Sharpie here, super thin little fine weight, very, very, very fine line weight. So the 3 line weights we're using, we have chisel point, which we can use for bold strokes. You can also, do things like this. So verticals are thin, horizontals are, excuse me, thick. You got the regular Sharpie line weight, which is thicker than this. And so for the subtle details, you have this thin line like this. So it allows you to create a sense of variation. So it's not all one flat drawing, right? So we got these boulders over here. So what we could do, we've done a little bit of wood grain here. This is fine like this. We could put a little detail like this, like that. We've got these little torches. We could detail them out, put another circle on the inside if we want to. And we're almost done with this room. We don't need to really do much more. I'm just going to put some jibble bits in here. Another thing to think about when you're drawing a map is like, well, what's on the floor? So what I like to do is I do this simple technique of like topography lines. Now, if you don't know anything about civil engineering or architecture, I'll just get another piece of tracing paper out here. Every line in the topography drawing represents a change in elevation in increments. So let's just do a quick little topographical drawing for you. Let's say your house is, say you live on a hill, right? So here's your cool house, a little gable end on it or whatever. Here's your little house that's sitting on a hill, right? So here's the front door, here's the roof line, whatever, chimney, etc. Goofy little sketchy house, right? So this is sloping down, so the person standing here like this is all sloping downhill. So in an architectural drawing or a civil engineering drawing, what they do is say, okay, let's say this is dropping by 10, this is a 10 foot, maybe a 20 foot drop. So we can say this is 20 feet. The 20 feet, and it's over a certain distance, say it drops over, this is like a rise and run relationship, right? So 20 feet over 40. So over 40 feet, it rises 20. It's like a 2-to-1 ratio. So you could say, okay, let's do little 5-foot increments of this drop. So that's what it would look like from the side view, right? And then they have the, here's the ground plane like that. So what you want to do is, if you look at that from above, it would kind of look like this. So you would have this house at an angle like this, and there'd be these lines that represent the topography line. Drop down 5 feet, drop down 5 feet, drop down 5 feet, and here's the gable, and here's the little, chimney and the little shadow and all that kind of wood business person standing here. So it means it's sloping down this way. So just type in civil engineering topography lines. You'll see them anywhere. And you look at Google Maps, it won't help you much. So for D&D, all you really need to know is, hey, is anything sloping anywhere? What's going uphill, what's going down here? Because sometimes you could have a gameplay situation where you need to know what that is. So what we've been doing is we've been doing simple little sloping lines. In fact, in the dragon room, in the white dragon room, we had this. This is a good example, right? So in this situation, this is an upper shelf. And if you look on the map on the right, that's this area 2. You see the area 2 and 2A? So this is the upper shelf where the female white dragon was. This is like a slippery, polished, burnished cavern, almost like a smooth ramp. And so we use some thick lines to make big drops and smooth lines. And this we use as jagged edge to mean kind of a cliff face. So if this thing sticks out about a foot, but it drops like 20 feet, this is a cliff face. But this thin line here, these are topography lines. This means the whole cavern's kind of sloping down here. So if you spilled a beer on the ground, the water would trickle. If you turned a garden hose on, all the water would trickle and run all the way down here like this. And those kinds of details make a difference, because if you have a character that's standing here, and you have a frost giant that's standing over here, you've got a drop in height of like 2, 4, 6. So there's a 6 feet difference in foot height. So the height of a person height. So if I'm standing behind this rock and this guy's looking back this way, this is much lower. So if this was something that was low, could he see over and see the top of my head? So those kinds of details make a difference, because you're trying to make the game feel as live as possible. Let's go ahead and get this. So in this situation, I just use a thin series of lines like this to represent what I feel and I want the topography to be. In this situation, I want it to be really big and broad. So in this situation, everything's sloping down this way. Okay? And now let's put some jibble bits for stone. So this is a big pile of boulders here. So what we could do is take our chisel point out and say, you know what, we've got a torch here, let's just make these things bold looking. So put little drop shadows on these, little circle shadows. This thing's got a shadow underneath it. We'll just put this like this. Here's a big bold shadow. Maybe a bold shadow here like we were talking about before. Big bold shadow, shadow against the wall. And then we can just put some little, use the chisel point to it, and then just put some little dots on here. And the little dots just represent, hey, this is stone business, right? Here's some chunky dots in the corner. Now, this is also kind of a dot type of thing. This is called stippling. Stippling is a technique where you use a series of dots to imply dirt, grit, things like that. The trick is, see how this is going into a recess? What you do is you start putting some dots further away randomly, like a bunch of star patterns, and then start increasing the density of the dots as you get closer and closer to the little niche. So that kind of represents a bunch of dirt that maybe is piled up in the corner, like dust on a asphalt street, and there's less dirt as you go away. So we have things that are up against wall faces. Walls will have lots of dirt and gibble bits next to it, and surfaces that are out on the floor don't have as much. So if you wanted to, you could see the grid beneath here. You could like put some cracks and gibbles like this. Now you got this big pile of rocks. Surely there's gonna be lots of tone happening over here. So we can put these little little stipple marks all over the place here. That gives us a sense of some character and tone. The horn's kind of goofy. Look, I'm not too impressed with it. In fact, I want to make this blacker. Let's make this blacker. There we go. And you know, we didn't really draw any wood grain on this table. I'll tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to put a nasty drop shadow on this big boulder. Because once you're in the room, even though the torch is right here, I still want to read as if it's really, really thick. Okay. And that's basically room number, what was that, 5? So another thing you should do probably is, when you make your maps, mark on yourself which room it is so you know which one it is. So then I usually trim off the excess junk. So we don't need all this stuff. Get rid of the tape. And we're going to do another room real quick. All right. So I try to line it back up to the grid again. And I try to put this as close to the edge as I need it. And let's make sure our table is lined up to the grid. Notice I'm trying to line the table up to the grid again. And we're just going to take this edge and peel it back across. In fact, we do it up here where it's on camera better. What we're trying to do, line the table up to the grid. Get this bad boy smooth. I want to get rid of all this excess from here down, okay? So we don't want any of that. So we just put this on a grid line, really clean. And we're going to take this, we're going to peel it back over the grid line. And when you do that, if you're putting downward force on your ruler, it should pull a perfectly straight edge for you. So you don't have to get out any scissors or anything. You can just turn that around the other way and do the same thing. So just line that little picnic table up or whatever, giant picnic table up, and this is going to clean up minimal unnecessary map size. And we'll just kill this too. And you get where you do this stuff really quickly when you get used to doing it. You end up with lots of this, right? You just throw it away, you don't need it. You can use it to sketch on if you want to, you don't really need it. And I'm going to clean up this edge over here, because what I'll do later on is I will overlay the other map on it too. So clean that off. More gibbles. That is a technical term. Alright, so that's room number 5. Anything else we do to make this cooler? Let's see. What else do we need? Have we got everything we need? We've got torches, got some rocks, boulders, tables. Oh, what's on the table? Well, these guys have big tankards, don't they? Surely they're drinking beer and goofing around. They're not doing anything. Do they have a big plate of food here? Let's try to put a plate of food here with a bunch of junk on it. Maybe some knives and silverware. Just some personality. Another thing you need to do is one thing you notice in Morrowind and Skyrim and some of the games that try to build out an environment where people are sitting. In this fact, let's put a stool here. Let's add a stool that gets moved around from time to time. Is don't try to make everything totally structured. So make sure that the grain of the little stool is sitting like this, little nib sticking out. Put a little drop shadow on it this way, underside, there we go. Try to make everything a little off-center. Don't make everything totally perfect. Everything's perfect, doesn't look natural. You were sitting here, you can have beer here, it's got the plate pushed to the side. Put a little drop shadow on that little plate. A little one here, here's one of the beer. There you go. Junk on the table. We could have drawn some hanging meats and things like that over here. Decided not to do that. Alright, that's probably good enough. Let's put some more rocky business on this, over this. So you start further away like a star pattern, and as you get closer and closer to where something's dense, you increase the stipple count. So far away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I usually just kind of take a look back at it, like see the forest for the trees and say, does that look good enough? Yeah, it looks pretty cool. It's not awesome. This is goofy, but whatever. It'll work. All right, let's do another map. So we got that done. That's room number 5. And that's when you want to pull up the, what other rooms were you going to do here, right? So we got our module printed up. Where's the map at? Did I move it somewhere? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I must have it moved. Here it is. Don't need all this other stuff. There's nothing I like to do too if you're a DM is mark your map up. I mean, print it up and mark it up. So I have, when I go through one of these dungeons, let's just give you a quick example here of that since the subject just popped in my head, bear with me. A lot of these modules in the old days, the stuff on the front few pages isn't that useful. These things like random bag roll tables, that's kind of traveler-esque. Like I don't need a star chip generator table. Nothing wrong against that. But then you get to situations like this. On the margin, I'll write, okay, listen, this area here has 12 ogres, 2 frost giants, 5 ice toads, yetis, 4 sleeping ogres. This area here, frost giant in huge numbers, 18 altogether. Frost giants 3, frost giant 5, 5 hill giants, 5 frost giants. And that at a glance gives me an idea. Like I've written on here, winter wolves are here, and here's 5 ice toads, and this. So when I'm starting to glance at the map, it jogs my memory. Because when you look at the original map, it doesn't really give you much of a clue as what's in the rooms. They're kind of agnostic. Remember, our players also have a map that they get to use. Let's just pull, and Obscure has been fixed. Someone noticed that her charisma was too low. Yeah, that was just a dumb mistake. So mark up your, print your module and, mark it up. That's one of the things that's kind of bad about the new stuff that they're doing. Now that the high production value 5th edition stuff is all printed books, you don't really get to mark anything up anymore. So you have to make your own notes and maybe scan it or something and mark things up, because you're having to flip through a hardback book. It can be kind of awkward. But then again, that was kind of the beauty of 1st edition, is some of this old classic stuff meant a lot of work for you. And that work also meant an opportunity to be really creative. So we're going to do another room. Let's put this out of the way here. What room should we do? We talked earlier about doing the one directly below, right? Why don't we do that? Yep. Okay. Pull this out here real quick. And we'll start with the same process. So here's our map. So what have we done? So far, since we started yapping and talking about this business, I'm just going to mark this up. We've done this area here. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to skip this common room. I'm going to jump right to this room 6. So what I can do is I can do room 6 here, which is kind of a neat room. It actually gets cool line of sight stuff going on with it. And I'll just make it go to about here. And see, there's a passageway, so I'll probably do from the passageway. So I'll just do this room here. Sometimes even sketching around the edge like this will give you a good sense of what the shape of the room is going to be. This is a really cool room. So let's go see about the room first. This is area number 6. So check your module and say, okay, what's in area number 6? The Emissary's Cavern. Okay, this will be a fun one. I actually have these bad boys printed up already. This is for Ogre Magi. I had a bunch of them they made already for the adventure. Let's see where they are. Do I have them easily grabbable on hand here? We have frost giants and dragons, everything. Ogres. There you go. There's a Ogre Magi. So I made a bunch of these Ogre Magi's just for this room. I got like 10 of them. They're nasty. They're a tricky character to run for an enemy. So this is what these guys look like, right? So we have Ogre Magi. And what does it say is happening in the room? All right, here we go. So, in fact, I can bring this up on the right-hand side and view the same thing I'm reading. It's on page 7. So let's just go to 7 real quick and see if you can see this here. This is this area right here, right? So we're going to read through that real quick. All right, so 5 Ogre Magi. I don't use their hit point numbers. I use max hit point numbers. Recently arrived from the Lord of their kind. They have had an audience with the Jarl, and after a special wassail to be held on tomorrow, tomorrow they will depart for home with a treaty scroll. Okay, so these guys are like ambassadors that came to visit. They had a big conference with the Frost Giant King, and now they're going to go back and talk to their own lord and maybe have some kind of conversation. Hey, we're going to join forces with the Frost Giants and do some more bad stuff for the Drow. The scroll is signed special mark by the Jarl. Offers the Lord of Ogre Magi 100,000 gold piece value in gems. Okay, this is all backstory stuff, something to remember. So we have Ogre Magi who are ambassadors. That means they're probably well adorned, good gear. I could jack up their armor class. Now, what's in the room? Each of them have pouches with stuff in it and a token. That's good to know for gameplay because the players pick that up. They'll be able to use it maybe, especially if they do a disguise like the illusionist. A small iron casket holds a gift to the Lord of Ogre Magi. Okay, now we've got a detail. So there's an iron casket. We're going to have something in the room that kind of looks like that. A trick box with 18 plates of platinum, 18 plates of electrum, whatever that's the stuff inside of it. This is all talking about the fanciful container. So when the designer was writing this room up, they kind of got carried away talking about the container. Let's go back to the room. Any more details about the room? Holding the box, blah, blah, blah. The leader group wears a necklace of fireball missiles, whatever. There's no other information about the room at all. So this is a great opportunity to make the room cooler than it said, because all it says is there's 6 guys in here. What's very interesting about this, if you look at the map, someone took the time to write on here that there are these markers where they're standing or something, which I thought was really bizarre. This is room number 6, right? Room number 6, the Emissary's Cavern. It's kind of odd because in other parts of the module, they'll say, you know, where the frozen blocks of ice were and stuff like that. They mark on the map where those blocks are so you can keep track of it. But for some reason, someone decided to mark where these Ogre Magi are. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to move this camera down a little bit. Get this big glaring light off of here. Let's turn this down this way a little bit. And we'll cock this at an angle. Get this straightened back up because we're getting kind of crooked. There we go. All right, cool. So we have a lot of freedom to do what we want to do here. Let's get this out of the way. We don't need this. And like we talked about before, the first thing we want to do is figure out how big is this room going to be. So once again, this is the direction you're going to see it when you play it. We're talking about this room here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's maximum, which is 50. Maybe add another 10. So let's get some paper. We're going to need our big roll of paper for this one. So let's get that out. And as usual, one of the best things to do is just go ahead and get a large piece of paper out first. And then you can cut off the excess later. So just going to go ahead and do this. Ripping sounds over the web. And I usually turn it opposite direction that are unraveled. Great. All right. And let's tape this down. Get some tape here. And I'm going to pull this down a little bit this time. Then I can tape it to the board. So what do we say, 50? 50 would be the worst case scenario. So I'm going to turn the map my direction and your direction the way you're going to see it. So this is probably what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 50. So the center of the map is probably about here, somewhere about here maybe. So we have 1, 2, 3 on one side and 1, 2, and 3. This would be 60. So this is going to be 60 width, maximum width. What else do we have? So, and this ticks down maybe an additional 10 feet or so. Now, it's the length of this one's kind of working against us. We could turn the board the other way, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave the board just like it is and work with it, okay? So let's see what we got for this here. Let's just turn this back like this, a little bit more straightened up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This may be too wide. Let's see what we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that's pretty decent. So we have this 8 by 50 box that we probably would work with. So we'll go all the way down to here. So within this box, like this, is the space that we need to draw the map in. Let me pull this up a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. There we go. All right, so where's the details coming from? So down this lower right-hand corner, we're going to have some cave stuff that's coming about 10-foot length. It's going to come up to here like this or so, and then 20 feet in, 10, 20 feet in. We have a little funny little bump out going out like this, which is going out maybe 20 feet, 10, 20. There's a bump out happening, and this is kind of dying into that. And then we have this little niche like this, and this is coming up. This is at the 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 10, 20, 30, 40. That's probably about this mark here. This tucks back around, and now we're going to move this out of the way some, and this goes over like this, and this tucks out. It's just pretty much oblique over to here. This is just a jagged edge wall all the way down. It's still offset this much, and it kind of comes over. So that's basically the main room, and there's this stone thing here in the middle, and we got these markers on the map, but they don't really mean anything. So in essence, that's pretty much the room. So we're just going to boldly knock that out super fast without wasting any more time, okay? We'll just start with the top here. So we're going to keep our jagged roof, organic cavern vibe going on here with this. We don't want it to be too square. This is sticking out. This is solid. Be sure to turn the chisel point the other way when you come back over. And this is just going to be a cavern coming like this. This tucks in. Let me just double check the detail here. This goes up and over. I'm actually going to have this go over a little bolder than that. I'm going to change that layout a little bit. Make this go a little bolder like this. And then tuck back up underneath itself, make like a cul-de-sac shape. And this goes up all the way down like that. And the rest of this is just fluff. Doesn't really matter what it is at all. That's a pretty rough shape. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you're totally perfect. You just want to get the general dimensions of the combat space correct. So this funny little bump out here. In fact, what I'm going to do, because it's such a large room, is I'm going to add an additional kind of a stalagmite formation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let some stalagmites on the ground here, make them as a series of circles. And then we're going to put some stalagmites on the ceiling. So basically, imagine drawing. This is still an ice cavern, kind of a frozen ice cavern. What you could do if you want to, if you're not good at drawing circles, is just draw a tangent circle like this, and maybe another tangent circle next to it, and another one here, kind of create an interesting pattern like that. And then when you do your dashes, you're just doing dashes mean things above in architectural sketches. So do your dashes like this, and basically what you're saying is this hanging from the ceiling is a series of, stalactites come down from the ceiling, stalagmites come up from mounted to the floor. That's how they work. So you've got those kind of details happening like this. Now, Ogre Magi are in this room as if it's some kind of ambassador room, so we want some furniture in here, don't we? And we're going to clear some of this, our guidelines off, these ones that aren't necessary, because some of them will look pretty bad. Let's get that out of the way, especially these tick marks that are counting size of the room. And this is just to keep it being too noisy on the camera. Eventually I'll get a really good high resolution camera so I can do some depth of field and bokeh effects and stuff like that. But for now, we're doing it old school way. Okay. So all this is just a Pelican cheap AL20 eraser. The thing you have to be careful with is the more you erase, the more you get this dirt black asphalt junk on it, and it'll definitely just start smearing. A trick you can do is you can actually just take it on a piece of paper and just sand that off by just going like this. See this black junk coming off? So you're basically sanding that dark off. It actually heats it up too. So once you heated it up, you don't have to, you just let the weight of, you just hold in your hand, the weight of the eraser will do the erasing for you. For example, see this graphite line here? So you just let the weight of the eraser. Gordon Ramsay said use the weight of the chef's knife. It's the same kind of thing. Use the weight of the eraser to remove the graphite. Because we didn't draw it on there hard anyway. It was just little sketch guidelines. And who needs Photoshop? All right. Almost done with this junk. We'll trim that off. Anything else in the way? That looks good. And we just use our little dry erase eraser thing to get these gibble bits off the way. Okay, so ambassadors, right? So you had Ogre Magi, and Ogre Magi, if you look in the Mounter Manual, you see what they are all about. What would be something cool we could do for them? Here's a chance to be creative. So I'm going to make this come down like this. Surely there's going to be like fanciful furniture in places. They're Ogre Magi. They're not like, they're 8 foot tall. So these guys are about this big. They'll have furniture. They're not going to sleep on a pile of fur in a corner next to wolf droppings. So where would be a good place to do that? So if with the stalactites here, stalagmites, they're going to be this large formation of rocks that keep tearing up, and polished up and up and up like that. Let's put another one here because we'll use that as a feature that we can do details with. So let's put another stalagmite formation here, have it maybe sticking into the wall, myconoid heaven. That way we can go like this. This comes in, and we'll use this formation to create a sense of space between where the beds are. Just draw circles inside of circles, because what you're representing is like you ever had sand in your hand as a little kid, make a sandcastle, it's like being dribbled up. So this will be a great space to put some beds along this wall, the far wall. So the beds can be on the far wall, and a common space could be here. Maybe put some fancy rugs on it. So let's just think about this. So you could put a bed here, one in the corner, maybe one about here, maybe another one here, kind of like bunk beds. Put 2 beds here, another bed over here, and maybe they just use this room for emissaries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just put an extra bed over here somewhere. This is underneath a stalagmite. That would get dripping, stone dripping on another bed there. And then they probably would have a table. So with this formation happening here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a stalagmite right here. Just a little small little triple one to kind of define the room a little bit better. And remember, notice how I'm switching line weights all the time. You definitely want to do that. Don't draw everything with one. Just because you have the pen in your hand doesn't mean you should use it to draw everything. You want to keep switching the line weights and finish out the little idea. All right. So then we can put a table here. We use our regular middle of the road Sharpie. What would be a good way? Let's make the table go the long ways. These stalagmite here, let's put a table like this. Long. This is 10 foot, 15 foot table. And instead of putting let's put some little chairs on this thing. So let's make these chairs with backs. And this is where you want to make that organic layout of the furniture. You don't want the furniture all tucked in perfectly like in the Pottery Barn magazine. You want it to look like people were sitting here and they pushed the chairs out of the way and no one's tucking the chairs back in. It's not supposed to be orderly. It looks more organic this way. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and maybe one less chair here. This would be a fancy table. Maybe it has a runner on it. So just put like a little fabric runner running across the middle. If you want to be flowery about it, you can put a little frilly bit on the end of it. Maybe put some kind of a crazy pattern on it that goes like this. Maybe put some kind of design on it. Whatever. I'm not an interior designer or a fabric designer, but that's something. And then you can have little plates. As if people ate some food here. Ogre Magi ate some food. Put some junk on there to represent food. Maybe some goblets. Little beer mugs. It's like they sat and ate here earlier. And then you can do other details, like you can make these chairs made out of pieces of wood. They're nailed together, so not super comfortable. Just make sure you match the direction of the chair like this. And make the table have this rough look to it. Rough, thin little design like this. And this is all going to be underneath the gameplay theme. In fact, we need a line weight change for this. Let's just put a quick detail for this runner here like that. Okay, almost done with the little silly chairs. And then we'll draw beds. All right, so let's just make these beds. You know, these are pretty big beds. I'm just going to make these, try to make them square. Don't make them off square. Just a big bed. And I'm just going to put round posts on each end. So just put a little round post. And we use that same design furniture for the whole thing. So it's all, you know, crappy wood construction bed. And then you can do more details later. So you can say, okay, well, there's going to be a pillow on it, right? So we'll put 2 little pillows on it. Here's a little pillow, maybe some rumpled sheets on it, like this, tucked back. Maybe this one's just got one big pillow slung in a corner. And the sheets are kind of folded this way, or the blankets, whatever. So let's finish all the beds. So we'll use that little idea and just take that through the whole thing. Bed. You know, the beds. Sorry, I'm right-handed, so my hand's probably in the way a little bit. And put little circles like this. In fact, if you draw the circles small enough, you can just make them solid in one shot. You don't have to worry about trying to go back and fill them in later really fast. God is in the detail, but he doesn't get a day off. All right. If you want to make these like fancy headboard beds, you could do that. I would consider these to be like a king size, crudely made beds. Ogre Magi's are like 8 feet tall. I'm gonna put 2 pillows on this one. This one I'm gonna put one big pillow, little pillow, round pillow, another pillow like this. And I'm just going to have this one have pillow on this one. Pillow slung in the end of the bed, all untucked and unfolded. There you go. Some sheets on it or whatever. You could put a little foot locker at the end, things like that. You can say, okay, you're sitting here, maybe a little end table, put your stuff on. Maybe there's a little rack over here to hang things on. Here's another rack to hang stuff on, like hooks or whatever. Hang your cloaks on it. So you have some cloaks hanging down. Just something rough, triangular shape to give you an idea. What else do you need? This thing here, you could probably have a, what could you do here? I guess I could have a bucket to have water out of. Here's a couple of buckets. And what else do we need? This bed's kind of shorter than the other one. Let's make this a little bit more detailed. The top, let's become a top line of the headboard. So you can kind of tell where the headboard is. All right, beds, done. All right. You can put more detail on it if you want to, but you get carried away and you don't want to watch me draw squiggle lines all day long. All right, so there's some beds, and we got some space. You come into the space, where would be a great place for like a rug. So you could probably lay out this loose line like this. Make sure it goes underneath, because it's underneath. Maybe like this is this crappy rug all torn up and stuff. That's been cut away and rumpled. There you go. There's a rug. So you just put the pattern on here. Maybe this is the end seam on the rug. Trying to make it as cool as possible. So what kind of lighting could you have in here? So we've been using torches for most of the spaces. You definitely need a torch, 2 torches on sconces or pins hanging out of this wall here. But this area here probably needs candelabra or a brazier. Remember, it's cold. We could use the same kind of lighting scheme we had before. We haven't talked about this. We have to figure out something neat to happen in there. This is a stalagmite. So I tell you what, let's just use a brazier design, but a triple candelabra brazier like this with a 4-prong, 5-prong base. So that's a light, and let's use another one over here, and this over by this one. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's all connected. And you can go back another line weight if you want to make that look a little cooler. Just draw a little detail on it, make it feel like it's got more than just one pass of Sharpie love on it. All right. Here's the backs of these chairs. Just give it some kind of tonal lines, just something, so it's not just bland and empty. If you wanted to, you could even like do some kind of a pattern on this. Just make sure the lines kind of go the same direction as the material goes. This is all ruched up, so the lines will be closer together. There you go, ratty rug. I'm not going to try to draw a pattern on the rug. You could do it on the back if you wanted to. And we still need to do the back. What about this area here and this area here? So this would be a good place to have a couple tables or something. If you know they're going to come meet with the Frost Giant Jarl, the host might bring items and set them down on a table, kind of like a hall telephone table or something in the old days. Let's put a couple of tables here for them to set stuff on, and we'll just make those simple little heavy wood grain tables like this. No cabinets or nothing. They're just sitting against the wall. That looks pretty good. In fact, what we'll do to make this even trickier is let's put an iron curtain rod right across here. And the Ogre Magi don't live in the frost environment, so they have a curtain that they can pull back to kind of seal all the cold air from getting in here. And they need something to heat this place up with, right? So you're an Ogre Magi sitting here at the table pounding beer, you're freezing your butt off. You got a stalagmite here. This could be a fire pit. All the heat would come out this way. Let's put a brazier over here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a brazier, a ground floor brazier here, but not as big as the one the Frost Giants use. They'll use this for a heat source. So we just put 4 big prongs to support it. Some baby prongs sit around the perimeter. It's like a fire pit you buy at Lowe's. And we just put some logs in here. So that's what they use for heat. That keeps them from freezing to death, right? All right, what else you got in this room? So moving through the combat, remember these are stalagmites, stalagmites, stalagmites. So if you're moving, this is the movable spaces around this, right? And you got the tables right in the middle way. This is a free space. This is a stalagmite, which is hanging from the ceiling. So you can run through here freely, but there's a candelabra in the way, a little detailed candelabra like this. And let's flip this map over. We still haven't decided what to do here. What would be a good thing to do here? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a water source here. So let's just say that there is kind of like a little pool, and it has dripping water coming down. We did one of these in the first level too. I'm not going to pull the map out. Where there's water trickling down. Make this come closer together as you get to here, and here's the water coming down, fresh mountain spring water. And then it comes over to the edges, and the little wave lines would be dashed and closer together. And we'll put a little bucket here next to it, get your water from here. So this is a good place to get water. Put a little stand here next to it, you can put cups on it. There, and this is just put some dash lines in here for ripples. All right, so this is like, all right, now we need to do our little stippling. So remember, start far away like a galaxy, and then get close together when you get to the edges. And just do it every now and then. Don't do it everywhere. Just do it every now and then. So something like this that's kind of dark and dank looking. Put this in here like this. And around these stalagmites, it definitely needs lots of gibble bits stipple this one a lot too. Stay far away like a constellation. As we get closer, we'll put them in really close, especially in these little nooks where the circles all meet. Let's put this together. There we go. One here. Let's put some more here. Those represent kind of like dirt and junk on the floor, so don't put it on top of the rug. Stalactites hanging from above, you don't really need anything there. Maybe something down this corner to kind of anchor a little bit. It's not very anchored. And this area here. There's a big long wall here. If I was Frost Giants, I would have some kind of cool poster, a big tapestry here of my Frost Giant Jarl King looking cool. So this is like a tapestry. So just mount that on the wall like that, little frame, put a little dash line so everyone knows it's a tapestry. That'll help you remember that. This other corner is probably just a pile of garbage. Nothing in here of merit. We don't know what these guys use for toilets, so we're not going to go into that. Okay. So that's pretty decent, pretty cool. Now when you talk about topography, so let's use this sloping down, okay? So we got areas sloping down, and all the rooms are going to slope down. I'm going to make this room slope up, okay? So what you want to do when a room slopes up is you want the curves to kind of, you want this to be a plateau, and then it to slope down quickly. So what you want to have happen is this is a plateau, so the water is here, a plateau, and this slopes down, like my hand sloping down. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have this line here, about where the curtain is, be where the slope starts. But we want to be as if they place the furniture on the same level area. So this is all going to slope down like this. Here we go, and put the lines closer together to get further away. There we go. And if you want to, sometimes you do the little topography lines, you can put a few dots along them. That'll help them read a little bit, but it's getting into too much architectural rendering style. Now we need to go in the back and do some fun stuff with the back. So just unpeel this relatively carefully. Flip this over. And you may remember one thing I like to do is just get the solid exterior wall with a double line on it. Let me get this tape off of here. In fact, I'm just going to tear it off because I'm going to pull that away anyway. This is where you want to be able to rotate the tracing paper with you to match whatever handedness you are. So if I'm right-handed, it's easier to do it this way for me. I like to draw away from me with these kind of lines. You can draw towards you. The reason why I like to draw away from me is because my hand can move a great distance like this. If I draw towards me, I'm going to move my hand. I don't want to move my arm. I want to move my hand. I want to anchor my hand and then just draw like this. So I want to do one long, solid, bold stroke. I don't really want to I don't want to move the map underneath the pen. I want the pen to move. So just a bold stroke. Because then the pressure of the fingertips is what's controlling the edges. If you try to do a big long hand, you're going to have your elbow joint control the line weight. It won't work as good. It'll end up being all jittery looking like you've been drinking too much coffee. So we're almost done with this. You could use a bigger, fancier marker for this if you want to, but whatever. I found that the markers bigger than these little shipping Sharpies, they die fast. They don't have a lot of ink in them. This is the same Sharpie I've been using for the whole season 1 and season 2. It still hasn't died yet, and I got like 12 of them. So that should easily carry into 2019. I'm going to turn this around this way and get this last part in here. At one point, I was thinking of doing hatching and stuff for the stone, but like I tried it on one of the maps, it looked terrible. I mean, if you're doing this digitally, you could probably do a really cool mask to represent stone. Some of the old dungeons in the Dungeon magazine did that. All right, what else can we do? We also got this rug. Let's just let's do a pattern on the rug like this. And I'm going to do some shadows over here. So I'm going to do some shadows like this on the back face to kind of represent some darkness, because this is underwater, so it'll look kind of cool in the front face. All right. What else do we need to do in the back face? No, nothing really. Now remember, we were saying before that there was something in here, right? What was it? It was in the room, some kind of a box. It was like a whole paragraph and a half, a small iron casket. Let's just hide that in the map somewhere. All right. Where would be a good place for that casket? North is to the top. Let's do our little north arrow real quick before we forget. Okay. You see that pretty good? I could move this down more. Sorry about the light glare. I can't get that light in a good spot. Let's just do this north arrow over here in the corner. And this is room number 6. I'll write that so I can tell where it is. And I just do this to let me know this is the entrance. So that's a break line. Something else could be back over there. All right. There's another room done. Okay, anything about that we need to add to it? We were talking about the box. I'll tell you what I'll do. If you were the Ogre Magi and you were the leader of them, this is a table they put stuff on. This is where everyone sits and talks. Here's the water. Here's the brazier. The leader would have the coolest bed. This one here seems to be the coolest bed. Let's make this one even cooler. So it's going to have more detail on it. It's going to have a side stand, another side stand, a little candle on it or something. A side stand like this. Maybe it's got a cloak hanging on a hook in the back. And this is where the little box is going to be. We'll put the little box right here. So to make sure it stands out, what I'm going to do for me when I'm running this area, because I run it legitimately, I don't cheat. I make the players only act with it. I put it like that, so I know that's the. This is where the little box is. It's in the actual module. Cool. So you can imagine you sloping up this passageway. You've got these huge stalagmites coming up, a couple of stalactites coming down. It bends around the corner. You can't actually see line of sight over here. Some of the Ogre Magi can be sitting at the table drinking. The curtain could be drawn or pulled open. And then during gameplay, let's just clean this. Let's cut the length of this map up real quick. Let me cut this length off, and I'll show you what I would do when I use the glass to amplify these. You've probably seen it in some of the episodes. I just want to kind of give you an inside look of like, how do you decide what to do? Sometimes being able to do something is one thing. Deciding what to do is another. And what you want to use the glass for is things to build ambience so the players can imagine the space in their mind. If they can't imagine it, it doesn't feel real. And that's the beauty of the original game, is the original first edition, is that everything seems so real because most of it's in your imagination. So when you're playing, when I'm showing episodes, north to the top to you, so I'm going to pull that back like this. And I'm going to tape the map down a little bit. So here's how we would play this. And you'll probably see this episode either tonight or tomorrow. I'll tape that down. Let me get the glass. I'll be right back. Okay. So I have this piece of glass that has furniture stoppers on it. You can probably see it. And the reason why I have those is so I can set this on top of this. And that gives me the opportunity to do whatever I want. So if I want to draw stuff on top of the glass, I can. And if I don't like it, I can get rid of it. And that means during gameplay, I can talk about additional details and stuff without disturbing or ruining the original map. So I could replay this entire adventure a year from now and repopulate it and whatever I wanted to do, Let's get this kind of crooked looking. My camera's kind of skewed today. It's not being a friendly camera. All right. So let's give you an idea how we could do this, how we could run this. Let's just say this is a room with, I also used to throw some bugbears down. It's not bugbears, so let's just say there was. That's because it's easy to get these guys out fast. No. So let's say you're a Zollers and you're coming in by yourself. Here's some guys sitting at the table. So what I do is I turn the tokens to facing the direction that you see them when you're playing. And a lot of times what I will do is I'll bring the map in a little closer. Let's just pop that map in a little closer like this. And we'll drag this over. Don't really need to see all that business. There we go. Pull this down. Put this up. There we go. So this would be like the map. And then you say you've got some guys sitting here at the table, and maybe one guy's laying in a bed. And what you would do, you think to yourself, okay, what's the first thing you think about as a DM? Well, you've got light sources here. So here's a torch. This is rising. There's heat up here. It's cold here. Hot air moves towards cold. So the warmth of this room being held by this curtain, so this curtain is all the way closed, okay? Means that above, the smoke would trickle out. That also means that the smoke in this thing would be trickle back down this hallway. So this torches are lit. The smoke here would probably billow up and rise up around this column and then trickle its way down the hallway. There's water here. There's a little candelabra here, and smoke would just trickle up and around the column, up like that. So that's kind of what it would look like. So Zoller's is coming up, all he can really see is this. So if you wanted to, you could take a piece of paper and cover this up, but a lot of times what I would do is like, there's a crack in here. So you can move up to here quietly, looked at a crack, he's only 10 feet away, you can roll for initiative, the combat could happen, this guy's across the room. But here's some things to think about that you have to do when you're doing these 2D maps like this. You have to do this when you do battle maps too, right? Think about what someone can see. Let's just change that scenario real quick. Let's say that Zollerus, say the curtain was open, and say you had a thief that hid in shadows but stepped right here, and you had one guy sleeping and one guy sitting at the head of the table. Let's say the guy sitting at the head of the table is sitting here talking to his buddy. So these two guys are talking to each other, and this guy's laying in the bed. And that's the only characters that are on screen. So what can you really see? Okay, he can see all the way through here. He can see all the way to here. This guy can't really see much beyond over the table. But if they were moved over here, if this guy was over here, these two guys were by the brazier, and this guy was over here getting water. This is where the drama of the room is part of the puzzle. I've said that to level designers many times. The room is part of the puzzle. So if you come up to here, this guy's facing the fire, this guy's facing the fire, but he can't see beyond this pillar. And this guy's over here, and he can only see this little crack between here because this is a solid object, right? So this is a solid stalagmite. This is a solid stalagmite. You got to think about these things because this really tactically affects the gameplay, especially if you're an old squad leader player. You come stand here, actually no one can see him. He would be able to see the back of the bugbear in this situation in front of a fire and see the flames flickering and illuminating part of his shadow. He might even actually take a step forward, and this guy here is getting water out of the corner of his eye, which is, peripheral vision is about 180 degrees from where you're looking. If he's looking this way, he might see motion on the corner of his eye, and he might turn this way, and he might just come charging forward, or he might slip behind a column, and this guy would see him, and then he could tell him with a hand signal that someone's coming. This guy, he could point. This guy could point that way, and then he could turn this way and take a step over, and then he'd see him. So all this stuff really affects what actually happens in the combat. So you really need to, as a DM, I highly recommend you consider using a method where your battle map, you can draw on top of it. Some people use and having the map drawn ahead of time allows you to do this kind of stuff. So you get this cool, interesting, cool layout. It's whatever you wanted it to be. And you took it from this crap, which is okay, but the reverse edition stuff is just a starting point. This room has no detail in it at all. Well, sorry about the shaking. But now you got a cool room you can pull out, and you could reuse this room somewhere else, another dungeon too. So that's basically the map drawing session for today. We'll wrap this up. We'll probably run an adventure maybe later tonight or something. It's almost 5 o'clock in the evening here. So if you like these kind of videos, let me know. I can do more of them. If you want to know more about like how to DM the situations, how do you handle line of sight, how do you handle sound propagation, how do you more drawing techniques, if you want to know more about that, I'd be happy to tell you that. I'll probably make another video that talks about how I make the different tokens. I've got some minis I'm painting for the characters. We're going to put the characters are going to be using minis soon. But if you like this kind of stuff, let me know. I mean, if there was tons of time, this would be full color. I would completely color this with color pencil and drawings, but I decided not to do it to keep it fast. So there you have it. That's this quick drawing episode today. Hope you had fun. I'll put this on YouTube as a separate playlist, and if you enjoy it, let me know. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, and if you have suggestions and comments, I'd love to hear them. All right. Thanks a lot.